Welcome to the NBA Slate Breakdown. I'm Jason Gilbo. With me is Brent Hyden. 10 games tonight. Finally, a big slate after a slow start to the week. Not slow in terms of action because it's been Fight Fest 2018 here so far to start the year.
Yeah, the NBA is giving the WWE a run for their money with these fights and things like that. I had another one last night with Aaron Aflalo and Nemanja Bjelica. That was pretty interesting. And then we thought Boogie and Jaylen Brown might be getting into it after the game because Brown flexing on Boogie. That was funny to see. But hopefully tonight we get another fight. Like I'm pretty excited about the prospects of another fight tonight.
I know. We got some ugly matchups. We got some guys who can throw hands out here. Serge Ibaka's on the slate. You never know what's going to happen there.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's dive in here. Washington, Charlotte first, 213 total. One of your favorite plays on the slates from this game, who I'm just going to kind of let you. We're going to start the Charlotte side because it is such a monumental moment on this pod.
I have a little bit of interest on the Charlotte side of this game, and that starts with Marvin Williams. And if you want to just go ahead and close out of this podcast after hearing that, I don't blame you. I wrote him up in the GPP article today. I think he's a GPP only play for me, but I do have some interest in Marvin here, coming off three straight. Really solid outings, over 30 fantasy points in three straight games, shooting the ball significantly better. Washington, like if you look at the matchup on paper, does not look like a good matchup for power forwards. They rank fourth in the NBA in fantasy points allowed, only giving up 43 on the season. But over the last 10 games, they've actually been 25th in defensive efficiency against power forwards. I think some of that might have to do with how sites would classify Bismack Biyombo after his massive outing, but still, I think it's a spot for Marvin Williams to come out and put up a solid game. He actually has been really good against the Wizards over the past three seasons. I had some interesting statistics in the GPP article, so you'll have to check that out. But price really fair. I think he's an interesting option. I think he has a decent amount of upside here against the Wizards.
Yeah, I'm with you. Surprisingly, I am with you here. Like you said, good history. Solid game against him earlier this year. Especially if Kaminsky sits tonight, definitely a few extra minutes going his way. And also, the ownership angle is probably going to be fairly low on him, especially if Draymond sits because Jordan Bell's right in that range.
Yeah, and obviously nothing wrong with Jordan Bell. We'll get to that game later on, but I'm not terribly in love with a bunch of value options on the slate, at least early on. Injuries obviously could change that, but I think going somewhere like with Marvin Williams and maybe Jordan Bell and just stacking those two in tournaments is a solid option. But again, I really like this spot for Williams. I think this is an excellent spot for Dwight Howard as well. Absolutely smashed in this spot last time out. We've seen Washington really struggle against dominant big men recently. I'm probably starting my lineups with those two guys tonight.
Yeah, Howard's definitely in a good spot here. One, he's just been absolutely playing out of his mind of late. Come off a monster game against Detroit. That DK price, 7,600, really fair for him. He's 89 on FanDuel. That's a little bit pricey for me there. But DraftKings, Howard's the guy that's definitely a bargain.
Yeah, 89 is kind of tough to stomach for him. There's a couple guys that we'll get to later on that you could look at there, but I'm not in love with the top tier options on the slate, as far as centers go. So I think he's probably the highest priced guy that I'd pay up for on FanDuel.
As far as the backcourt goes, Kemba Walker, Nicholas Batum, any interest in these guys?
Walker's fine if you want to go there. Probably just a little bit too expensive for me given the matchup. I think there's better options here. Definitely a solid cash game play. Like you would expect him to come out and get you, 36, 38, maybe 40 fantasy points. So I don't mind going there. Not really into Nick Batum here. Just way too volatile for me. Jeremy Lamb's a little bit interesting, especially if this game ends up going a little bit smaller. We saw him come out and play 37 minutes last time against Washington. I believe Batum sat that game out. So those minutes may be artificially inflated, but it looks like Batum played 14 minutes. Lamb's been an interesting option recently, coming off a couple bad games, but prior to that had been over 20 fantasy points and like 5 or 6 straight outings. I don't mind him in the spot.
Yeah, I mean, last 5 games he's averaging 9 field goal attempts, 4,500 on FanDuel, and he is
5,100 on DraftKings.
yeah. I don't mind taking a shot there. That's pretty much it from Charlotte, right?
Yeah, yeah, same. Yeah, I'm not looking anywhere else.
On the Washington side, I don't mind John Wall here. He is a little bit expensive. I kind of just use him more as a pivot away from what's probably going to be a popular Curry tonight. We look at Charlotte. I mean, they have struggled against point guards of late. 21st in defensive efficiency over the last 10 games. We saw Wall play really well against them earlier this year. Wall's been playing well of late too. One thing that you do got to note, I think more so on FanDuel, is the fact that he's turned the ball over quite a bit. That does hurt. DK, it's a little bit different because obviously different scoring, but over 50 fantasy points in each of the last 4 games. Like, he's kind of scoring at will. The assists have been there. 9,700 DK, I think, is still a fair price, even though it's not the mid eights like we were getting kind of earlier.
Yeah, price obviously starting to climb. It's interesting to note, like, he's been above 9K for the past. This is now the 4th game. He's back-to-back games. He's at 9,700 on DraftKings. Minutes have just been insane for him recently. 41, 40, 36, 42, 42. Production, you mentioned, has been there. Turnovers are a concern. He's got 8 turnovers in 2 of his last 4 games, 4 turnovers in the other games. Production ridiculously high, double-digit field or over 20 field goal attempts in 4 straight games. 3-point shooting hasn't really been there, so that's a little bit concerning. But I mean, we're looking at a spot, especially if Markieff Morris sits out. Like, John Wall, 35% usage without Markieff Morris on the floor this season. Very, very good spot for him. I definitely don't mind using him in cash games or tournaments. He comes out and gets you, 55, 60 fantasy points. Like, you're absolutely loving it at that price.
Definitely. And I mean, you mentioned minutes for Wall. Bradley Beal's been in that same boat. These guys are just eating a ton of minutes. And, I don't mind Beal. Beal's a little bit cheaper. So if you do want Washington exposure, like, Beal's not in the worst spot in the world either. That's 7,700. If he's going to play 40 minutes, he's going to take, 17 plus shots here. He's another one where, we've seen some assists go up for some of these backcourt guys, and 3, 6, 7 to 7 assists over his last 4 games. Like, Beal's adding a couple of peripheral stats. I don't mind him because, one, I just think when you look, Tyreek Evans might have a little bit of ownership, Lou Williams, Donovan Mitchell, so I think he can go a little bit overlooked.
Yeah, a little concerning. Charlotte has been much better against shooting guards of late. They're first in defensive efficiency over the last 10 games, so that does concern me just a little bit. I'd say probably tournaments only, but he's a very, very good tournament option. And then, like, if we're looking other places, Otto Porter's been terrible recently. They've talked about trying to get him more shots, but they've also talked about, like, Otto Porter. I think Scott Brooks said, like, Porter has to help himself if we're going to help him. So, like, if you want to take a shot on him against a team that's been really bad against small forwards for the majority of the season, that's a fine option. And then I mentioned Markieff Morris possibly being out. Didn't practice yesterday. It's probably going to open up more minutes for Mike Scott and Kelly Oubre. Both fine options. I think Oubre is a fine cash and tournament option. I think I like Mike Scott significantly more if he gets the start here. It's an early game, so we'll know who's starting before lock. I do like Mike Scott a significant amount if he gets the starts, or I should say if Markieff Morris is out, because they may even start Jason Smith. Who knows what they're going to do? But I think Scott's the play here, looking at it like a cheap forward option.
Yep, I'm with you. I'm kind of pissed. I've missed some good Gortat games of late. I'm not going here tonight. It's just a tough match for him. He's 5,200, a little pricey for Gortat given his volatility.
Minutes in theory should be there, given they're gonna have to play big to match up with Dwight Howard. If you want to take a shot in tournaments, go for it. You can't play him in cash. You can't play him in cash games. But, like, again, if you're wanting to take, a shot on him in tournaments, go for it. Like, he has upside here at that price. Put up 30 fantasy points against his team last time out. Did it on 4 of 4 shooting, had 11 boards though. So not the greatest of spots here against Charlotte, but tournament upside for him.
Gortat is Polish for no cash.
There you go. And it's not Polish Heritage Night, so
It's
there's
true.
that.
It's true. Anyone else you want to talk about here?
No. You're just kind of like I said, you're waiting on news for Markieff Morris.
New Orleans and Atlanta here next. 221 over under. New Orleans back-to-back overtime games. They're on a back-to-back here with travel down to Atlanta from Boston. I don't want to be worried, but I am.
I think it's a spot where you do have to have a little bit of worry here, especially given the durability issues that some of these guys have had of late. Frank Kaminsky now probable. Awesome. I love this game. I love both sides of this game, to be honest. With the Pelicans, I think it starts with Anthony Davis coming off 2 massive games. Again, I don't know that he's a guy that you can feel comfortable using in cash games. Tournaments, he has massive upside, but there's also going to be a significant amount of ownership. So do with that what you will. I think he's a guy that I'm probably building around in tournaments, even though I don't like paying up on most nights, given the matchup, given the production he's had recently. It's 41, 50, 45 minutes over the last 3. That does concern me a little bit. I'm deathly afraid of the fact that he's going to play like 8 minutes and then fall and, go to the locker room and we may never hear from him again. So that concerns me. It's still just a great spot for him. So I don't have any issues with building around him in tournaments.
No, I don't either. And that DK price, for his potential production, is very reasonable. Like 10-5 is not a bad price for him. We've just seen the monster outings like against Atlanta's front court. Like it's just that production could very well be there again. We've seen Cousins kind of look a little bit off. It's just last night, uninvolved in the game for parts of it, which was a little bit concerning, but I think that's just more because Davis has been so dominant and he's kind of getting out of his own way. But I don't mind going there in GPPs as well, because this is also a spot where Cousins could dominate. And as you've mentioned prior with Cousins, those turnovers, he hasn't had less than 5 turnovers since January 3rd.
Wait, so you're telling me that Cousins was basically Cousins in last night's game? He just kind of didn't do anything for parts of the game?
It is true. Like it was just him kind of going off and standing into the corner. Like there was times Marcus Smart followed Cousins into the corner.
It's Cousins being Cousins. Like this is what like you see out of him most. Like some games he's heavily involved and he's going bananas, and then other games he just doesn't feel like playing, so he just stands there sometimes. But interesting to know, again, what we've talked about it several times, Cousins historically significantly worse on the second half of back-to-backs. That does concern me a little bit. But the matchup here, outstanding matchup for Cousins. If you want to roll him out there, go for it. I think there's better options that you can look at in cash games at that price. Tournaments, a fine tournament option. Has a ton of upside given the matchup, but I think I'd rather Anthony Davis if you're wanting to attack the front court weakness of Atlanta.
Yeah, if you're building a few lineups, Davis is obviously the guy. If you're building a fair amount of lineups, I think you get a little bit of Cousins in there. And I know you and I are also kind of looking at some of these secondary options. You're taking a look at Etuan Moore, who's been interestingly better on second half of back-to-backs.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like I put some statistics in the GPP article, but like this season, I believe it's only a 6-game sample size. Shooting like 60% from the floor on back-to-backs. He's shooting 53% overall this season. Not typically, you don't like to target shooters like jump shooters on back-to-backs, but the trend has been a thing this season and last season. He shot better on 0 days rest as well. It's a great matchup for him. Minutes have been solid for him. Field goal attempts have been kind of up and down. It's been a little volatile in that sense. That's why I wouldn't consider him in cash games, but price is really, really solid. Again, I mentioned the matchup. Atlanta really struggles against spot-up shooters. They struggle to defend the three-point line. I really like the spot for him. I think it's a spot where he can definitely pay off the salary. Of course, you are a little concerned he doesn't generally contribute in other spots other than, points, but having him play the small forward position for the majority of the game moves him just a little bit closer to the basket so he could fall into some extra rebounds. I like him here. I think he's a great tournament option.
Yeah, definitely don't mind him. Drew Holiday's the other guy that I'm taking a look at. 6,700 on DK. Well, he's been playing very well, over 45 fantasy points in each of his last 5 games. Obviously, a couple of OT games there, but overall, I mean, Holiday's just been playing great basketball, especially this month, and a great spot against Atlanta here. 27th defensive efficiency against shooting guards last 10 games, third most fantasy points in the last 10. Do worry about the back-to-back here. You mentioned, obviously, shooters, and I just think everyone in general we have to be a little bit concerned about because Holiday has been locking just massive minutes alongside everyone else. But at that price, I still think 6,700 is fair for a guy who can put up 40 plus fantasy points here.
Yeah, it really is fair. And it's, you mentioned the matchup, obviously great matchup. This game projected to stay pretty close, so that's pretty awesome. Drew, like I just pulled it up, not terribly bad on 0 days rest. Shoots 50% from the floor on 1 day's rest, 48% on 0 days rest, but he's attempting more shots. So that is kind of nice to see. I think some of that may fall into like the Boogie not being as good on back-to-backs. So last season shot significantly worse, about 4 percentage points worse on 0 days rest. But I do like the spot for him. He's an excellent option against an Atlanta team. Just really bad against spot-up shooters, really bad against the pick and roll, really bad in transition fairly bad in transition defense. Great spot for him. I do like him a lot. If you're looking to attack this game, which I think is a smart thing to do, you're probably looking at Holiday and Davis as like core guys.
Yeah, and I think there's some definite steals upside here as well. He's averaging 2.8 over his last 5 games, and against a Hawks team that does turn the ball over and does allow steals quite often, this is a spot where Holiday can rack up a few.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a popular option. So maybe in tournaments, if you want to pivot off, that's fine. But he's a great option here, and I don't mind Rondo. Again, minutes obviously something to be concerned about from time to time. Has seen very limited minutes. Jameer Nelson, who was ruled out for yesterday's game, ended up being a surprise active play later in the afternoon. Didn't actually play. They played a lot of Ian Clark. Clark's minutes have been pretty solid recently. It's a really disgusting value play, but it's an option if you're really, really desperate.
Yeah, don't hate it. That's it for New Orleans for you.
Yeah.
Let's go on the Atlanta side here. I don't love it as much as I do it because I feel like they're going to be in such good spots. They're all at fair prices, but they've been so volatile of late, especially Prince and Bazemore, and those are the kind of guys that I usually like to attack. But start with Schroeder. I just kind of feel like he's a little bit up in price. I wish he was a little bit cheaper, but can't deny that it's a good spot here for Schroeder as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't use them in cash games just because I think there's safer options to target, especially at that price. And we'll get to those guys here shortly. I think he's a fine tournament option against a team that has struggled at times this season to defend point guards. We did see them do a decent job against Kyrie last night. Rondo actually played solid defense, which was kind of surprising, but I don't mind taking a shot on him. He's not a guy that I'm terribly in love with, though. You mentioned Bazemore. I think Bazemore is the interesting option here. I do have a lot of interest, especially at that price. I know he's 5,500 on DraftKings. Let's see, what is he on FanDuel? 57. A solid spot for him. Pelicans have struggled at times this season to defend wings, so I do like him a little bit here. Prince, I'm probably off him just because he's dealing with the dislocated finger. Production's been down. Shot attempts have been not great recently, so I don't think I'd have any interest there.
Yeah, I think it's weird because he had the issue was against the Clippers, right? And then came back out against Denver, played well, and then like we've seen a steep drop off the last 2 games.
Yeah, and he's listed as probable for this game. Obviously, you do want to keep an eye on the injury report because we know what probable means in the NBA.
Yeah, that's very true. You attacking this front court at all?
I do have a little bit of interest in Dwayne Dedman. He's up to 5K on FanDuel or on DraftKings, 5,100 on FanDuel. Has been playing significantly better recently. Minutes trending in the right direction coming off that leg injury. 23, 26, 31 fantasy points over the last 3 games. A solid matchup. Foul trouble a concern. So you're probably looking at tournaments only. Because if he gets in foul trouble and you have him in cash games, your lineup could be dead, man.
Very true. Good one. Very good.
Yeah, that was terrible. I'm hanging it
If
up.
they haven't shut off after Marvin Williams, they have now.
Yeah, that was terrible. Good tournament option though. Like not a guy that has a ton of upside. You're probably if you're using him, you're hoping he gets to like 32, 34 fantasy points, which he has done. And I think in this matchup earlier this season, he had like 20 fantasy points in 12 minutes, but he also had 4 fouls in 12 minutes. So maybe we get the DeMarcus Cousins standing in the corner, not doing anything game, and that keeps Dwayne Dedman out of foul trouble.
Very true. Are you attacking like Ilyasova, John Collins here?
No.
Yeah, there's other options I think in that price range, and Dedman I think is the preferred guy.
Yeah, he's the guy that I'm looking at here.
Spurs and Brooklyn, 207. Not that appealing of a game here. Kawhi probable for tonight's game. Pau Gasol questionable. I would probably put Pau maybe more on the doubtful side. Would you?
Yeah, I think this is a game he sits, which does make things a little bit interesting. But like, I don't know, this game. Like, I'm kind of off this game, even though like I do really like Kawhi Leonard here in cash games. His price does make it really tough for him to pay off that salary. But he's been over 40 fantasy points in 3 straight games, 49, 43, 43. Minutes still, he's going to be limited. He's already said that he expects to be limited for the next like month or so. So like, don't expect him to come out and put up like 33, 34, 35 minutes. He's going to hover around that 28-minute mark, maybe fall into 30 if depending on how timeouts and how the TV timeouts and things like that work. But I think he's a fine cash game option. You expect him to be able to come out, get a bunch of blocks and steals, and heavily involved in the offense. So I do have interest in him as like a core option for cash game lineups because he should come out and put up like a 40, 45 fantasy point game.
Yeah, definitely should. I don't know. Aldridge is in a good spot here, but I don't know if I'm going to be paying that price. I mean, easily could drop 40 plus fantasy points here, but I'm probably looking at a guy where I'm trying to look for guys that probably have a little bit more upside here. I don't think they're going to need the big 50 burger game from Aldridge here.
Probably not. I would probably have a little more interest if we're looking at like Pau Gasol being out because they may move Aldridge to the 5. I think he's a safe option. So again, in cash games, you can use him as a guy with a pretty safe floor. Probably not a ton of upside though as far as tournaments go. I think the guy that I'm most interested in, and this does depend on Pau Gasol's status, is Davis Bertans. I think he's an interesting option. Minutes have been fairly solid for him, even with some of these with the guys pretty much all being back. We do have Manu sitting this game out, obviously Rudy Gay out as well, so could be a little extra minutes and usage for Davis Bertans on that second unit, and minutes will be up there if Pau Gasol sits.
Yeah, I mean, he's been above 20 fantasy points in 5 of the last 7 games. I think the night everyone hopped on the Lakers game was his worst night of the year. And, but bounced back against Denver. Yeah, I definitely think he's a solid option. And, obviously if Gasol's out, I like him even more.
Yeah, I went back because I went back and watched that Denver game yesterday because I was doing some analysis on the Denver defense, and it was kind of funny to watch Davis Bertans pull up from like Steph Curry range on some of these 3-pointers. Like, dude does not care. Like he'll pull up from like the logo and just jack up threes. It probably makes Popovich crazy, but he's a fine option. I do have a lot of interest in him.
Yep. I don't know how much I'm going with the backcourt here. I think there are better options to attack these guys. I don't think there's a ton of upside.
You want to take a tournament flyer on Danny Green, go for it, but I'm not looking anywhere else.
On the Brooklyn side, 10-game slate. I don't see myself going anywhere here.
Maybe Dinwiddie.
Yeah, he'd probably be the only one.
Yeah, that's probably it for me. Maybe Karis LeVert, but I don't really want to pay that price for him.
Yeah, and tough spot for Hollis Jefferson, so no thanks.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm leaning. Like I don't have like I should have more interest in this game because like one, the Spurs not great on the road this season. Their offense is bad on the road, so they're not really blowing people out, but their defense is really good on the road. So like I don't really have as much interest in this game as I probably should.
Yeah, and we're not moving on to anything exciting either because Detroit and Toronto are next year, and this is another kind of ugly game where maybe one or two pieces from each side, and I think obviously the Detroit side we're gonna have to wait for some of the injury news as well.
This is a game where Reggie Hearn could probably play big minutes. That tells you how bad this game is probably going to be because people don't even know who Reggie Hearn is, and he's not even in the player pool for DraftKings. So yeah.
But Reggie Bullock is.
Yeah.
How many Reggies do they have on their team?
A lot. Three, yeah.
I just don't. I mean, one, it's not a great spot for any of these guys. Like on this Detroit side, I think Toronto can come in here and also just kind of beat them to a pulp as well because we've seen Detroit play bad on the road. And I think obviously Toronto has a potential to just kind of take care of business here, and we kind of see a letdown game from Detroit. Like just they almost crossed out the calendar already.
They probably did. It's kind of funny. Like, I wonder how many people are going to like try to play Reggie Bullock and they're going to like accidentally click Reggie Hearn and then they're going to donk like a tournament win or something because of it. But I just don't have interest in this game. Like Lowry's interest, I guess a little bit interesting given his price, but obviously came back last game, shot really, really bad. Like there's better options at his price points. You mentioned a history for Jonas Valanciunas against Drummond. What is it? You said like 28 fantasy points in several games against him. I'm going to pass there. Fred VanVleet's questionable. That could lead to more minutes for DeLon Wright and Norman Powell. None of those guys terribly intriguing. Like I'm just off this game except for maybe a little Lowry and maybe a little Ish Smith.
Yeah, Lowry's the guy that I have the most interest in. You mentioned shot poorly against Philadelphia. Still put up 32 fantasy points. I think the steals are there. I do think he can rack up some assists, but I think it's just more because his price and because I probably know he's going to be single-digit ownership because even in Lowry good spots, he's just not highly owned this year because of DeRozan and because the usage is down and he just hasn't been as consistent as years past. But this Detroit team, I mean, over the last 10 games, have just been awful against point guards. And surprisingly, Philly has been really good against point guards over the last 10 games. So maybe it's something about that.
Yeah, I don't know.
So, yeah, Lowry's the only guy that I really have interest in. Valanciunas, he has averaged 28 fantasy points in his last 6 games against Detroit. It's just more of he's going to probably be used for minutes when Drummond is out there. Obviously, Valanciunas is going to be close to the bucket. These are kind of the spots that we do like to use him in. I just don't think there's a ton of upside there, and there's probably better options in cash. So it was just more of a stat to note.
Yeah, you're not using him in cash games. It's probably a spot where it bites us in the rear by saying he doesn't have upside and he comes out and puts up 41 fantasy points. But
him and Gortat are going for 40 each tonight.
Yeah, probably so. So yeah, if you're building a bunch of lineups, again, I wouldn't say no to having a tournament, like a sprinkle of him in tournament lineups, but this game's pretty blah.
Yeah, and I probably only use him on DK, or we could use another center because FanDuel, I'm not using my one center on Valanciunas.
Yeah, exactly.
Golden State, Chicago. We bounced back here with a 231 total, far and above the highest of the night. Draymond Green is questionable here. You and I both kind of expect him to take a seat, let Jordan Bell kind of reap the reward of showcasing off and what could have been his fans.
Yeah, it's the cash considerations game for Jordan Bell. So obviously going to have to wait and see what news comes out. You mentioned Draymond Green being questionable. Steve Kerr did rest him last time these teams played, and Jordan Bell played a bunch of minutes, and Jordan Bell did Jordan Bell things, and he made all the Chicago fans really hate the ownership group for selling that pick to Golden State. So Draymond Green sits. Feel free to roll Jordan Bell out there.
Yeah, easy enough for me. I'm sold. I've been sold, I don't know, since last night around 10 o'clock. So I don't mind Bell here. I will gladly use the three other stars here for Golden State and sprinkling them in lineups. I do like Klay Thompson just because of the price difference from the other guys. And it frustrates me for sometimes because he will go for 20 fantasy points in like 5 minutes and then nothing for the next 15. That's my frustrating part with Thompson, but it's a really, really good spot here.
Yeah, so basically like last game where he goes absolutely ham in the first quarter and then disappears for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
I actually wrote him up today in the GPP article. I do love this spot for him going up against a Bulls team. It's been really, really bad defending shooting guards with Levine in there, who's not known for defense. It's a good spot. They struggle in spot up shooters. This game you expect to be extremely fast paced. A lot of high scoring. I think the last time these teams played it was like 143 to 90 something. Golden State had like 110 points in 3 quarters. Yeah, I love everyone from Golden State. Tournament's best way to get exposure, I think, is Klay Thompson here. I don't mind taking a shot on Curry and Durant here either. I think I prefer Curry, but there are also options that I prefer for cheaper at point guard. So FanDuel, I think Curry's fine. DraftKings, I think you can definitely make a case for fading if you want to. So yeah, everyone from Golden State's in play, especially if Draymond sits.
Yeah, definitely. It's pretty easy enough. This Chicago defense is abysmal. Let's talk to Chicago's side, though. I kind of want some exposure because, I plan on having a decent amount of Warriors exposure tonight. I don't know. Chris Dunn, I think, is viable. You mentioned Levine's probably going to be fairly chalky, but still on a minutes limit. Like, he's going to shoot lights out. Like, he's going to have to kind of get into some other stats to really be a difference maker. And I don't know how much it's going to happen. It's not even a great spot either.
Yeah, I think he is going to be pretty darn chalky given he's coming off a game where he put up 36 fantasy points in 20 minutes. If you want to roll him out there, that's fine. Like, I do want to warn people, like, he's gonna have to just go ham in 20 minutes to pay off his salary. Like, he's 5,100 on DraftKings. He is really cheap on FanDuel. I think he's 4,100. I would much rather have him there. It's much easier for him to pay off that salary. Again, you're locking in a very chalky player that's only playing 20 minutes. There is a clear path to him flopping here. So if you want to fade him in tournaments, go for it. Like, he could come out and bust, or he could come out and put up a huge game. I mean, it's a guy playing 20 minutes. Like, I would exercise a little bit of caution with locking him in. I do like Chris Dunn just a little bit. Struggled against his team last time out. That was kind of before he found his footing in this offense, though. I have more interest in Lauri Markkanen and Nikola Mirotic here. I think both are viable options given their price points, and I think both are in excellent spots here. Both going to be shooting a lot. Like, we expect this game to be very fast-paced, a lot of shooting possessions for both guys. I think Mirotic is the guy that I prefer a little bit, just given he's a little bit cheaper. But I don't mind either one of those guys, and I think Bobby Portis is a little bit interesting too.
Yeah, I definitely don't mind the front court here. All are really at fair prices. You mentioned Markkanen. He's just been lights out from three of late. Last 5 games, 54% from the field. He's really found his groove, really over the last 10 games or so.
Yeah, he really has. And I mean, dude's breaking records out here. He's what, the fastest rookie to 100 3-pointers or something like that. So it's a good spot for him. I like him, and I like him here in all formats. I think if you're getting Golden State exposure, I think running it back with Markkanen or Mirotic is a very good option here.
Yep, definitely agree. Anyone else you want to talk about?
No.
Alrighty. Miami and Milwaukee, not that appealing of a game here. I will say Dragic, though, on the Miami side, 30% usage rate over his last 10 games. He's picked up the pace, obviously, with Waiters out. And we've seen Milwaukee just be abysmal against point guards of late. I don't know what's going on with them, but I don't mind Dragic here. I think he's at a fair price. Like, he's 7,100 at FanDuel. He's DK's 76. Still not that bad. Like, he's in a range where it's in a better spot than Kemba, probably a better spot than Lowry.
Yeah, I mentioned cash viable point guards that are like in really good spots, and that's Goran Dragic. Like we know Waiters is out, Tyler Johnson not expected to play. Uh, Dragic 33% usage without Tyler Johnson and Waiters on the floor, 1.34 fantasy points per minute. He's really upped his game recently. He's going to be playing heavy minutes because they don't really have another point guard in that offense. I don't really see a reason to fade him in the spot. Like you mentioned, Milwaukee being bad against point guards recently. I love the spot for him. He's a core play for me in all formats, even in GPPs, given that I think he's going to have pretty high ownership, but I don't mind going there. I wrote up Whiteside. There is significant risk with him given the minutes that he's been playing recently. And they could, Miami could end up going small for a significant portion of this game. But I think he's a guy that has plenty of upside at his price given the minutes that he could play. I mean, he put up almost 40 fantasy points against his team just a couple days ago. So I do have a lot of interest in Whiteside as well. And 25% usage, 1.21 fantasy points per minute without Tyler Johnson and Dion Waiters on the floor.
Yeah, I definitely don't mind Whiteside. You mentioned the minutes. That's really the only concern with me here. And GPPs, I mean, he's got that potential to hit 40 plus. It is a good spot against Milwaukee. I think there's obviously double potential. There's block upside here. It's really just Dragic and Whiteside. You might be able to take a flyer on James Johnson and GPPs.
Yeah, I think Johnson's fine. I actually think you can use him in cash games. I think he's a fine cash game option. I did mention in the GPP article an interesting pivot off of Whiteside would be Bam Adebayo. If this game does go small, he could see a little bit of extra run. So he's a fine option if you want to pivot there. Wayne Ellington probably will see extra minutes. So you can look that way as well. Pretty much everyone from Miami is in play here, depending on the format you want to use. The only guy that I'm not terribly interested in is Derek Jones Jr.
Yeah. I mean, even Kelly Olynyk's viable. I don't know if you're going to get, point Olynyk where he's going to dish out 8 assists again, but he's definitely viable. He has some upside.
Yeah, he's another option you can consider. Have you just real quick? Did you see the injury report for this team yesterday?
No.
Rodney Magruder, left tibia surgery. Okaro White, left foot surgery. Dion Waiters, left ankle sprain. Tyler Johnson, left ankle sprain. Their left side, like the left side of everyone's body in Miami is apparently really bad. Like, it's just really funny. Like, everyone that's injured, it's their left side.
I don't know what's going on down there.
I don't know. A bunch of right turns, apparently.
On the Milwaukee side, I don't have a lot of interest here. I'll never say no to Giannis, but he's just a little bit out of price. I prefer using some other small forward options. Middleton, Bledsoe, kind of at a price range where I'm still looking at other directions. Like I don't like Milwaukee.
I like Malcolm Brogdon.
Yeah.
And it's just basically we already know what's going to happen with Brogdon. He's going to come out. He's going to play a decent amount of minutes. He's going to get you like 24 fantasy points.
Which is exactly what he did last time out.
Oh, if you're wanting to lock in a guy that's going to get you like 24, 25, has upside for 40 fantasy points that we've seen as well. Not the greatest of matchups, but give me some Malcolm Brogdon.
Yeah. You want to move on here?
Yeah. Please.
LA and OKC. We saw these two teams a few games ago. OKC blew them out pretty good. I don't expect Lonzo Ball to play. Brandon Ingram is likely to suit up for tonight. Larry Nance is questionable. So we do have a little bit of Lakers news. With Lonzo Ball, it's weird because obviously you kind of expect Clarkson to be the guy, but it's weirdly been Josh Hart who's probably been the most consistent with Ball out.
Yeah, and I'm fine using Josh Hart. Like, I'm just not – like, I don't really want to get a bunch of exposure to this game. Like, the Lakers are just downright terrible. like
Yeah.
without Lonzo Ball on the floor. And none of these guys are like great prices. Like Josh Hart's fine. Did he play 32 minutes last time out, 26 fantasy points against Memphis? Bad matchup there. So, like, if you want to take a shot on him, go for it. The rest of these guys, like, no one really intrigues me that much.
Yeah, I will say this about Hart. He's 3,500 on FanDuel and he's shooting guard. That's probably that's his best kind of like analysis is because it's not a great spot, but he gives you that luxury of punting a shooting guard spot if you want to go there. And I think 25 fantasy points is in his range of outcomes tonight. And obviously that just opens salary quite a bit for some of the directions. So if you're going stars and scrubs, he's not the worst play.
Yeah, Tyler Ennis probably gets the start and plays extra minutes here tonight as well. Cheap enough to consider. I think I would rather go Hart. Clarkson, not for me, not in this spot. Like the front court, like it depends on who starts. If for some reason they don't start Randall and maybe they play Kuzma, I do have a little interest there. That's pretty much it for me from the Lakers side of this game. It's just really they're just so bad. They're just so bad. Like I just don't want to. I don't want to put a bunch of money on any of these guys in cash games. So if you want to take a shot in tournaments, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Clarkson's fine in GPPs. He's 3,900 on FanDuel. Like DraftKings, I think they're just a little bit higher price where you're just like, but I'll take a shot at Clarkson in GPPs. It's just one, he just hasn't been great, but yeah, this Lakers side, I just don't really want a piece of. You mentioned Kuzma, he'd probably be the guy that I have the most interest in, and especially if Nance sits because Nance has been cutting into his workload a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't know that we'll get that news early enough to really do anything about it. So, like, if again, I think you're taking shots on these guys in tournaments, and that's pretty much it.
Yep. On the OKC side, I really don't like a lot of guys here either. I think Westbrook's price is just way out of range for me tonight. I don't see him going out and having one of those monster games. If you're building a ton of lineups, obviously you can get some exposure, but I'm still going to be looking at better price plays.
If you want to play him, go for it. We do get the angry Russell Westbrook narrative after getting ejected last game because he got hit in the face and then got up and was angry at the ref for not calling it, and they threw him out, and he stormed out of the locker room without talking to the media. So there is that narrative. If you want to ride that narrative, great matchup. The Lakers have been better on defense of late, better than people expect. So, again, it's OKC and it's Westbrook. If you want to play him, go for it. Same with Paul George, Carmelo. You want to roll those guys out, go for it. It's a fine spot for both them, and it's a fine spot for Adams, who's still probably a little bit too cheap for the safety that he generally provides.
Yeah, I mean, like if you want 30, 35 fantasy points as kind of a base from your center, like Steven Adams is your guy here. And you mentioned Paul George. 7,500 on DK is kind of one of the reasons why I'm like a little bit hesitant to use Leonard, because I think their range of outcomes is a bit similar tonight. And like I could take a $1,200 discount. I don't mind George here. And we've seen the Lakers, I mean, 30th defensive efficiency over the last 10 games against small forwards. On the year, they're allowing the most fantasy points per game. George, 27 minutes last time out, put up 37 fantasy points. The steals have obviously been a huge upside if you can get multiple steals here. Like, it's at a fair price where I think George is probably my favorite play from this OKC side.
Yeah, George is probably the guy that I'm looking at here if I'm getting exposure. And again, I think he's cash viable given his price and the floor that he generally has. Has plenty of upside here, especially if for some reason this game stays close. One guy that is kind of interesting is Raymond Felton as a value option. He's not playing a ton of minutes, but his production has been solid outside of the Kings game. So I do have a little bit of interest in him coming off the bench. Might play a few extra minutes if this game does get out of hand. And it's interesting to note, like Billy Donovan was talking about the second unit and sitting and not playing one of the stars with that second unit. They rolled out second unit of Raymond Felton, Alex Abrinas, Jeremy Grant, Josh Husis, and Patrick Patterson. They've only played 15 minutes together, but they're outscoring opponents by 18.9 points per 100 possessions. Billy has been pretty adamant about using that second unit a little bit more. So he might actually play Felton, some of these second unit guys, just a little bit more. So you could look at those guys in tournaments. None of these guys are cash game plays though.
Knicks and Memphis next one here, 203 total. Just kind of another gross game. On the Knicks side of things, I just don't like the price tags for some of these guys. They're just way too high for me. Like, I'm not going to be looking to really use Kristaps tonight. Cantor, Hardaway, like, they're just a little bit pricey for me.
I kind of like Cantor here. Price is much lower than it generally is. He's down to 5,600. Not the greatest of matchups. He's coming off a game where he burned a lot of people against the Nets. He only played 9 minutes against his team last time out, 27 and a half minutes, 30 fantasy points. I don't mind using him here. I think he's cash game viable given that price and the upside that he generally presents. Tim Hardaway Jr. is going to play. We saw him play 33 minutes against New Orleans, put up 41 fantasy points. I think you can take a shot on him in tournaments, and Courtney Lee's down to 4,700. Don't expect a ton of usage out of him with Tim Hardaway Jr. back, but he's a guy that you can consider as a price option.
I guess I kind of take my Tim Hardaway thing back. Memphis has been abysmal against shooting guards of late, like really, really bad.
Yeah, they really have. Like, I don't know that you're using him on FanDuel because he's like 6,400.
That's kind of where I was looking at these Knicks prices because like Cantor's 62 there, Porzingis 91. So I guess DK they're a little bit more viable.
Yeah, but on DraftKings, like I think he's a very, very, very interesting tournament option, and no one's gonna be on him because like people jumped on that train last game against Brooklyn, and I guess people just didn't think that it was a guy returning from injury, played 33 minutes. It was a back-to-back, and he was like, there was a significant chance that he was going to sit, even though nobody reported it. I think people got burned by that, and people are going to fade him here, even though they literally came out and said that he was going to play tonight.
Yeah. Do you have any interest in the Michael Beasleys, Kyle Quinn's, the guards at all?
No, definitely not on Beasley with Tim Hardaway Jr. playing. What
do you got for me?
Well, they just had a tweet. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution Hawks Pelicans game will be played as scheduled. I didn't know. I guess there's weather that might have had that game in question.
Oh, there's it's wintry mix. It's the snow stuff. So I think anytime the South gets that stuff, it's like, how it is.
No Draymond Green or Andre Iguodala tonight.
Fire up Jordan Bell.
Yes. Jordan Bell will start. Yes.
God, they did this. It's so on purpose.
Yes.
It's so on purpose. Oh, my shoulder flared up. Oh man, perfect timing.
So I don't even remember where we were, but we were talking about Beasley. Yeah, I don't want anything to do with Beasley with Tim Hardaway Jr. playing.
Yeah, and no interest in the guards here, right?
No, you now have like Trey Burke there and like Ntilikina coming off a big game, could draw some ownership. Not for me.
Yeah. On the Memphis side of things, I don't hate Tyreke Evans. I just don't know if I'm going to go there.
I do hate Tyreke Evans. Not. I just I'm not going to do it. Not at that price. Like, there's so many better options, so many better ways to go. Like, I know the usage and the production has been solid for him. Again, this is a spot where I do not like targeting guys that attack the rim against the Knicks. Like, they have really good rim protection. Kristaps Porzingis is comes flying out anytime someone tries to drive to the rim. Kristaps comes flying from the other side of the court and just knocks the ball halfway across the freaking arena. So I don't want anything to do with Tyreke Evans tonight.
Yeah, I'd rather use Lou Williams. I'd rather use Bradley Beal, Donovan Mitchell, those guys over him. I don't mind Marc Gasol here. You mentioned, obviously, we don't usually tend to like taking centers against the Knicks, but I actually don't mind Gasol.
Yeah, he's fine. I think there's better options in that price range, but he's down to like 7,800. That is a little bit interesting, but like I'd rather take Adams for cheaper in cash games. I'd rather have Whiteside in tournaments for cheaper. I'd rather have Dwight Howard. So yeah.
Anyone else from Memphis is
Andrew Harrison is a cheap option to consider. Decent matchup here. Minutes kind of up and down, but he's a guy you could look at. I don't know if Dylan Brooks is going to draw any kind of ownership coming off like career high 19 points against the Lakers. Interesting stat here. So hang on, I gotta find it. I have it here. Okay, so Dylan Brooks has scored in double figures 13 times this season, but on the following game, so each time that he scored double digit points, the following game he's followed up with single digit production.
ugh.
just an interesting stat. Like he's definitely a fade for me. Like I don't think you were considering him anyways, but if anyone was thinking like, oh my god, Dylan Brooks coming off a big game against the Lakers, maybe he does it against the Knicks, he's probably going to follow it up with like 8 points.
Yeah. And you mentioned Harrison, 3,900 on DK is 55 on FanDuel. Definitely much more of a DK play. I had to mention it.
Oh boy, yeah, you're definitely not doing that on FanDuel. What are you doing, FanDuel? Yeah, you're not doing that. No. Definitely DraftKings only play there. Maybe fantasy draft. I don't have his salary pulled up there, but maybe fantasy draft.
That's it from Memphis.
Yeah.
It's Utah and Sacramento here. Another kind of gross total, 204. Utah side of things here. I'm just kind of going with the two main guys. Like I don't mind using Donovan Mitchell. I like his price on DraftKings a little bit more than FanDuel, where he's 8K. Pretty stable floor. It's weird for me. The lack of peripheral stats have been down a little bit of late. You kind of need those to chip in and get you up over 40 fantasy points. But 7,300 for Donovan Mitchell on DraftKings in this spot against Sacramento, who have been struggling more and more against guards of late, have really kind of pinned my interest here, I guess, with Mitchell in this spot.
Yeah. You covered it. Like we're dealing with the situation in Utah where it's like, even though they're banged up and there's a lot of injured guys, like they still have a lot of players in that rotation. And like, you're going to get like Joe Ingles could come out and put up a solid game, or he could come out and flop. Rubio's just been downright atrocious. Not really looking there. Yeah, Donovan Mitchell. I'm not going after Rodney Hood. Yeah, Donovan Mitchell and maybe Derek Favors in a good spot here, but that price is starting to come up and he's not really seeing a bunch of minutes. Like he's kind of capping out like right around the 29, 30. Like he's gotten 32 and 34 in a couple games, but not really a ton of upside. So if you want to use him in cash games, go for it. But I'm not like forcing him into a lineup.
So looking at some of these games, like last game, 29 minutes, like they lost 109-94. Tough matchup against Charlotte, Miami, Denver, New Orleans. He played 35 and 34 in those games. Golden State, obviously, they were blown out, blowout against Denver in that prior game. Like this game obviously should stay close. Like I still think minutes should be in the lower 30s here, and it is a great spot.
Yeah, possibly. I think you do have to consider like some of these games, like New Orleans, he got extra run because of, two big lineups. Obviously, Sacramento can go with two big lineups. It depends on what lineup, who's going to rest and who's going to, be out tonight. But you probably are looking right around 29, 30, 31, maybe 32 minutes. Again, I just don't see a huge ceiling with them.
Yeah, we're not talking any more Utah guys. Sacramento, this is just, we got the news that they're going to be resting veterans, and I'm going to dread when Sacramento's on slates. I really am.
How are you going to treat Royce O'Neal like that? Come on. You're just gonna skip over him, just not gonna talk about the guy.
Okay. Well, you can talk about it. I don't have much interest, but
I mean, I pretty much I gave everyone the rundown last time out. He's a guy playing. His minutes are trending up. They are pretty weak at the position. Value option, not a huge ceiling. Don't come out and expect him to put up, what did he have? A freaking 11 and 10 double against Charlotte. Like, I think maybe 10 points, 8, 9 rebounds is his ceiling, but it's a solid matchup. So again, a guy at 3,200. People are now talking about him and thinking they're smart by talking about him now. Like, I think the train is going to start to fill up. So take advantage of that now and then hop off here pretty quickly when his price starts to rise.
yep. Let's move to the king side. Obviously this is going to be nuts because we got to keep an eye on Scal Labissiere here, who is questionable for tonight's game. I do want to talk about Willie Cauley-Stein, though, real quick. He's probably my preferred option from the Sacramento side. We've seen him log heavy minutes at times. He's just been playing great basketball. I know he struggled in those 2 games against LA. But we've seen Utah, kind of just drop off a little bit against centers. Middle of the road in defensive efficiency last 10 games. Middle of the road in fantasy points allowed against centers. What?
As expected, Lonzo Ball is out tonight in OKC. We're capable of winning without him, Luke Walton says. So far, Lakers 0-7 when Ball is out.
Oh, man. Man, you're really getting a kick out of that one.
It's just so funny. It's like, we're capable of winning, and then the beat writer's like, the Lakers 0-7 when Lonzo is out.
I think the seriousness of this slate can be determined by our seriousness on this pod.
I love the NBA. I'm just gonna say that I love the NBA.
So you okay with Willie here?
I'm 100% okay with Willie. Like, we know Utah not great without Rudy Gobert on the floor. They're 12th in defensive efficiency against centers, 27th against power forwards. Again, we're kind of waiting to see the starting lineup. Minutes probably not going to be at 40 if like Randolph plays, but still a very solid option to target here. The rest of this team, like, I think you're looking at De'Aaron Fox, and it is a home game for the Kings. So Buddy Hield at home. There you go. That's my analysis for the Kings. Like, there's really not anywhere you can go without knowing who's going to rest and if Scal is out.
Yeah, maybe we'll get these news before 7:00. Maybe not, but you don't have to take unnecessary risk on a 10-game slate, and we've given you 3 options for the Kings that are fairly safe if you do want to attack them.
Yeah, like, you're not going to – De'Aaron Fox, Buddy Hield, and Willie Cauley-Stein aren't going to sit unless they're injured. And just a heads up, you're not getting the news before lock.
Very true. So I don't know why I gave you that optimism. It's very poor of me.
Dave Yeager is going to tell us after the game that like Kosta Koufos and Garrett Temple were out for rest.
At least he was very generous in giving us some, like, he gave us some sort of warning. Like, hey, this is going to happen from now. I'm not going to tell you what's going to happen, but it's going to happen.
I will say this. So Vince Carter and Zach Randolph sat out the last game. Educated guess here, just using a little bit of deductive reasoning. I think Zach Randolph and Vince Carter play, and if Skal Labissiere is out, and we may actually get that news ahead of time, then Zach Randolph is definitely going to play. They still have Papagiannis, they still have Koufos, and Koufos' name is being tossed out in trade rumors, so maybe they give him, maybe they don't sit him. If I had to guess, it's probably Temple and Koufos, or Temple and George Hill at rest tonight.
Let's move on here. Last game of the night, Denver and LA, 222 total. We'll start with the Denver side, who we know no one's going to be suspended from. Denver obviously coming off a great game for a lot of these guys. We saw Jokic, go ham last night. Gary Harris, Will Barton both had solid games. We saw Jamal Murray and Trey Lyles struggle. Back-to-back here for Denver. I'm not too worried, and I kind of like some of these prices. It's going to start off once again here. You referenced this the other day with the Clippers being second defensive efficiency against shooting guards, but have also been bottom 5 in fantasy points allowed. Gary Harris is just one of the most consistent shooting guards this season.
Yeah, I do love. I'm a Gary Harris truther. Everyone knows I'm a Gary Harris truther. Like, I've been on the Gary Harris train since last year, and I'm not hopping off the Gary Harris train. Scored 25 points last night. He's averaging 22 and a half over his past 4 outings. If you want to use him, go for it. Good spot. I know the Clippers' second defensive efficiency, like you mentioned, still giving up a bunch of fantasy points to shooting guards. I think they fell from 30th to 29th. Woohoo! So they improved, but still 45.15 fantasy points per game to the position. If you want to use him, go for it. He's excellent rebounder, good scorer, blocks, steals, upside too. So feel free to roll him out there at 6K.
Yeah, definitely. If Barton's jumping back into the starting lineup, are you in?
Yeah, I think he's fine, even if he's not going to jump in the starting lineup. Like, Mike Malone said he was going to use that starting lineup to inject some energy into the team. That was his statement yesterday. The night before, he said that he might change his starting lineup to go small like Dallas does. So whatever reasoning he wants to use, like, I think we're just going to have to wait and see what lineup he rolls out. If DeAndre plays, which he was originally doubtful, now he's questionable. If DeAndre plays, you might actually see the 2 big lineup of Plumlee and Jokic back out there, which means Barton would move to the bench. Just kind of wait and see what the news says, but I think he's in play regardless.
Yeah, I mean, at 5,500, I'm not too worried. And Gary Harris at 6K just seems like such a nice bargain. I don't mind going back to the well here with Murray. Big letdown last night, but he's always just a GPP play for me, so these games are to be expected. He's coming off really just 2 horrific games. But this is a bounce-back spot. These Clippers bottom 5 defensive efficiency over the last 10 games. They just don't have a defensive guard that I'm worried about.
You mean Milos Teodosic doesn't scare you on the defensive end?
No, but if we start getting points for nutmegs, then I'm all aboard.
Yeah, I don't think Jamal Murray is quite on the level of Chris Paul with his nutmegging ability. But again, you mentioned very volatile option. Shot 3 of 9 from the floor last night. He's 33% yesterday. The last 2 games he's shot exactly 14.3% in the 2 games before that. He's a very streaky guy, so definitely don't mind using him in tournaments and hoping that you catch the front end of the hot streak. Other than that, though, not really looking anywhere else except for Trey Lyles, who I'm still just gonna continue to roll out there. I know shooting has been way down for him recently, but I'm still gonna consider him an option tonight.
Yeah, for sure. Jokic, I mean, obviously coming off a huge game. I'm a little bit worried about recency bias. I'm also a little bit worried about the back-to-back here. I think he's can be in the range of 40 to 50 fantasy points. I don't think we see the huge ceiling, though, tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I think he could be in the range of 40 to 50 fantasy points. He could also be in the range of like 25 fantasy points. Like, this is a guy who at times has struggled on back-to-backs. He did actually play fairly well against this team last time out against the Clippers historically. I think, let's see. He shot 65.2% from the field against the Clippers. Last season, averaged 17.3 points and 10 rebounds in four outings. If you want to take a shot on him, go for it. I do like better options at the center position, though. If DeAndre does sit, like, it will be kind of tough to fade Jokic here.
Yeah, very true. Any deep dives in terms of the Denver team? Are you going with like a Wilson Chandler here at all?
No.
He's the worst.
He is. He's like, he's just so bad. Like, his price is falling. He's going to be 3K. He's going to be in the 3K soon. Like, just think about that. This is a dude, like, last season was like 6-7K. He's going to be in the 3K soon.
Yeah, it's because me and him have the same fantasy points per minute.
0. Like, he's coming. He had 22 fantasy points against the Mavericks last night. Played 38 minutes. That's kind of crazy. But yeah, I'm not looking there.
Clipper side things, if we could potentially get some news here, I think obviously the hot ticket's going to be Griffin. We don't really need to worry about anyone else.
Yeah, I don't think you have to worry about anyone else. Like, they're not. Austin Rivers might face a suspension, but he's already sitting anyways because he's injured, so it doesn't really matter. Like, we might get Blake Griffin news today. It's one of those things you're really going to have to keep an eye on. He could get suspended, then he could appeal it. We're just gonna have to wait and see. If he plays, I absolutely love him in this spot. DeAndre Jordan is questionable. Again, I mentioned he was upgraded from doubtful to questionable. That does concern me. Does make me think they're wanting to play him. But if we get news that he's out, I do absolutely love Montrezl Harrell here as far as guys from that front court.
Yeah, I definitely don't mind him. Like you said, if Griffin is, a go tonight, I'm all aboard. We talk about Lou Williams here, and once again, the usage continues to be through the roof. His production continues to be. You're kind of always hoping that you fade, and the fade pays off, which it could tonight, but it's tough.
Yeah, I joked at this, but when we were before we were recording, I was like, I'm gonna keep on fading Lou Williams, and one of these days it's not gonna burn me. I don't mind him. Like, if you want to use him in cash games and tournaments, go for it. Against the Denver team, they do tend to play fast, do sometimes play terrible defense. If you want to use him, go for it. Like, price is pretty high, but he continues just to be insanely good. So, 51 fantasy points against Houston, coming off 40 against Sacramento, 46, 65. He's a guy he's gonna get you either mid 30s, or he's gonna go off and get you 50. So if you want to roll him out there, go for it. I don't have really any advanced in-depth statistics for him. If you want to use him, go for it. Usage is insane here. So usage actually, I believe, will even go even higher without DeAndre Jordan on the floor.
T dosage, guy I usually don't like, but I kind of like him tonight.
I wrote him up as a tournament option today in the GPP article. He's a guy I do have a lot of concern with using him because he is dealing with that plantar fasciitis and he's playing limited minutes. He's still a guy, coming off a game where he put up 30 fantasy points against the Rockets, against a Denver team that does struggle against point guards. You could see him come out and put up 12, 14 points, 6, 7 rebounds, 8, 9 assists, and that pays off that $5K price tag that he has. So I like him in tournaments. He's probably cash game safe, but again, you're dealing with a guy that has a very serious and very painful foot injury.
Yeah, I do think he's cash game viable. I agree. I do think obviously kind of 25 to 30 fantasy points is kind of what you're looking at him tonight in this matchup. So definitely don't mind it. I won't be chasing the Wesley Johnson game.
No,
as you shake your head. Yeah, no, we don't need to. Tyrone Wallace is a name people are throwing around. His minutes have been over 30. I don't hate it. I kind of do, though, because I don't think there's a ton of upside. I know he blew up against Golden State, but I still think there's better options.
He's fine for cash games. Take a stand in tournaments and fade him.
Yeah. Anyone else?
No.
That's it. A long, laughable pod here. Let's go biggest disappointment tonight.
Hang on 1 second. All right. That's all I have to say about tonight's slate.
And if you for some reason are like, what is he talking about? It's Jordan Bell.
I think everyone should know about that by now, but the Chicago Bulls sold the pick that became Jordan Bell to the Warriors for cash considerations, and now the Warriors are going to troll the Bulls with Jordan Bell every game.
It's beautiful. And lucky for the Bulls, they only get to do it twice a year.
Yeah.
So, let's go. Biggest dud tonight.
DeMarcus Cousins.
Knew it. it's not that I hate Kawhi Leonard tonight because I do like him, but I think Kawhi Leonard's going to be a guy who does disappoint in this matchup if you're expecting him to go off.
Okay.
Not that he's, it's a weird one because like if he gets like 30 tonight, that's not good.
Yeah, I was gonna say like there's a path to him getting under 40 fantasy points, and if he gets under 40, then that is a pretty big disappointment for people that are expecting him to go bananas.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to say because obviously like he's 8,700. I think it would be a hotter take if he was like 7,700.
Yeah.
So, but that's my call. That's going to wrap it up for us. You can head over to fantasycafe.com. You can check out the GPP picks article, which features a lovely Marvin Williams from Brett Hyden here. And we'll see you guys Friday.
Good luck tonight.